Imagine standing at the edge of a roaring river. It is 40,000 years ago. You cannot swim, you have no tools. On the other side is food, safety, and your family. On this side, a predator is hunting you. If you step into the water, you die. Yet, your ancestors crossed. How did they do it without a single nail, rope, or boat? For early humans, water wasn't a highway, it was a death sentence. Most rivers back then were wider, faster, and colder than they are today, and they were fiercely guarded. In Africa, it was the Nile crocodiles. In Europe, it was freezing glacial melt that could stop a heart in just 2 minutes. To a primitive mind, a river wasn't just water, it was a living monster. If you couldn't cross, you died out when the local food ran out. Isolation meant extinction. But then a small band of humans trapped against a flooding river in ancient India did something impossible. They didn't build a bridge, they didn't build a boat. Instead, they used a secret trick hidden inside the trees themselves, a trick that changed human history forever. Before the raft, there was the log. It sounds simple to us, but to a human who had never seen anything heavy float, it was pure magic. They watched dead trees drift during floods. They realized that what should sink sometimes stays afloat. The earliest strategy wasn't elegant, it was the body hug. A single human would cling to a rotting, hollow log. They would kick with their legs, using the wood as a primitive life jacket. But there was a hidden danger. A single log rolls. It spins violently in the water. If you lose your grip in a rapid, the log bounces off rocks and crushes your skull. It was highly dangerous, but it worked for short distances. It got them across the small streams. But what happened when they reached the truly massive rivers? The Amazon-sized torrents where a single log would get sucked under by terrifying whirlpools? To survive that, humans had to look down at the very earth beneath their feet. In places where the water was too violent to touch, humans couldn't cross in the water. They had to go above it, but they had no ropes. In the dense jungles of ancient Asia, they found a solution that is still alive today: the rubber tree. These trees grow massive, powerful roots above the ground. Ancient humans didn't cut them down, they guided them. They took the young, flexible roots and pulled them across the river. They laced them through hollow bamboo trunks to steer their growth. Over decades, the roots grew across the chasm and anchored into the opposite bank. They created a living, growing suspension bridge. It couldn't rot, it couldn't wash away. In fact, the older it got, the stronger it became. But these bridges took generations to grow. What if you were running for your life right now? What if you were in the middle of a barren desert with no trees and a flash flood was rushing toward you? Ancient desert nomads had to invent a way to turn animal deaths into a literal lifeline. Imagine a river crossing in the ancient Middle East. No trees for miles, just rocks, dirt, and water. The solution was brutal but brilliant. When hunters killed a goat or a deer, they didn't just eat the meat. They carefully peeled the skin off in one whole piece, avoiding any punctures. They scraped it clean. They rubbed it with animal fat to make it completely waterproof. Then they sewed up the leg holes and the neck, leaving just one small opening. They blew into it. They filled the goat's skin with human breath until it was tight as a drum. They tied it shut. Suddenly, a dead animal became a flotation device. Hunters would slide into the raging waters, hugging these inflated animal skins. They could float across deep, violent rivers while keeping their weapons completely dry on top of their heads. But this still only moved 1 or 2 people at a time. It didn't allow humanity to colonize the planet. To move entire tribes, women, children, the elderly, and tools, they needed something massive. And they built it using a material you can snap with your bare hands. Look closely at a single reed growing in a swamp. It is weak, it breaks easily, but it has a secret structure. Inside the stem are thousands of tiny, microscopic air pockets. It is nature's styrofoam. Ancient humans realized that while one reed sinks when soaked, 1,000 reeds tied tightly together cannot be sunk. They gathered millions of reeds. They bound them with vines into thick cigar-shaped bundles. Then they lashed those bundles together. They didn't build a hollow boat that could fill with water and capsize, and they built a solid floating island. The water could wash right through the reeds, but the raft stayed on top. With these reed giants, humanity finally conquered the biggest rivers on Earth. They carried fire, they carried their children. They turned the ultimate barrier into a highway. Every modern bridge we drive across, every massive ship we build, started with a terrified human staring at a moving wall of water. They had nothing but their minds. They didn't wait for the world to become safe. They looked at a floating log, a tree root, and a dead animal's skin, and they saw a path forward. Our ancestors didn't conquer the world because they were stronger than nature. They conquered it because they refused to let the water stop them.